Our main character's name is Alistair, who with a calm expression tries to understand how he became who he is. Remembering the first day after his rebirth in the new world, he was faced with bitter disappointment because the curse of the time loop hung on him. In a world where everyone treats other people as enemies and the main law is the law of the jungle, he had a hard time. He had to go through a huge amount of humiliation in order to achieve the highest goal, making incredible efforts. But, like anything, everything has its pros and cons, and being in a time loop allowed him to have a huge amount of information and sleep with all the women in the world. The main character was able to benefit from his curse, and, being outside the power of time, he was able to improve the divine eye, becoming stronger with each passing day. This power allowed him to accomplish a huge number of things, including helping a huge number of people, and in particular the elder of the great clan. Knowledge and experience in battles allowed us to take revenge and get rid of the stupid traitor who always intended to harm our hero. During his life, he saw a huge number of beautiful girls, some of whom needed his help. And ultimately, one day, the suffering and torment of our protagonist ended, giving him the opportunity to live a full life. Our hero sees in front of him a huge golden sphere, emitting a colossal amount of energy. This sphere is called the Arctogi star system. He also notices 4 huge stone statues protecting this clot of energy from outsiders. The main character rushes forward without the slightest worry that he might die in battle with these guards. One of the stone guards delivers a powerful blow with a sledgehammer, cutting through the air and making it red hot. The main character, using his physical strength and acquired skills, easily dodges such clumsy attempts to hit him. In a few moments, he soars into the air, ending up directly above the heads of the stone guards guarding the sphere. Alistair begins to absorb energy. His body begins to exude a red aura containing unimaginable power. He makes a simple wave of 2 fingers of his hand, and with one attack cuts all the guards standing around him in half, cutting time and space in his path. The main character understands that this is not the only level of defense for the sphere of magic and prepares for the next attack. Great warriors lined up in one row begin to appear in front of him, showing with all their appearance that they have gone through a huge number of battles. At the same second, a portal opens from which various demons and spirits of past centuries begin to emerge. They say that the main character is incredibly brave and stupid since he dared to invade the land of magic and immediately began to attack. The protagonist understands that the phantom souls of the greatest warriors in history have gathered before him, but even they cannot entertain him. After a moment, he begins to move from one enemy to another, inflicting countless blows on them and leaving not the slightest chance of victory. Their battle ends very quickly and Alistair stands in a cloud of dust, with the battlefield stretching behind him. He looks at the sphere of magic around which a huge number of chains are hovering, asking her if this is your new image. Inside the sphere is a stately man with white tousled hair, who is Emperor Sumer. Looking around at what is happening around him, the Emperor asks the main character who caused all this unrest. Alistair calls his name and asks for forgiveness for disturbing His Majesty's rest, but he urgently needed to meet with him. The Emperor turns out to be quite surprised that his subordinates were able to deal with him so easily, and decides to personally test what our protagonist is capable of. Sumer concentrates a huge amount of magical energy in his hand, and then attacks the main character with palmistry. The main character doesn't even think about running away from the Emperor's blow, saying that he has incredible strength and he is very impressed by this. The Sumer's face shows the incorruptible shock that an ordinary mortal does not shudder before his power and does not try to avoid the attack. Alistair dispels the Emperor's attack with a slight movement of his hand and decides to tell him who he really is. The main character recalls the earthly world familiar to us and how he was an ordinary student reflecting on his future life. One day he was late for an important event regarding final exams and, sitting on his bicycle, tried to make it in time for it to start. Not noticing the red traffic light, he jumped out onto the roadway, along which a truck was driving towards him at great speed. These memories associated with the unfortunate incident were the last in his life, and watching the endless darkness before his eyes, he could not imagine that he would be reborn in another world. The main character found himself in an unfamiliar body, in a world unfamiliar to him, trying to understand what happened to him. After a while, he found out that he was in the lands of the Hong continents, and more specifically, in the territory of the Wang sect. The protagonist was not tormented for long about his new life, and he decided to find out as soon as possible who he was and where he could get help from local residents. As it turned out, the main law in the New World was the law of the jungle, and if you were weaker than someone else, it was impossible to get help. Moving in an unknown direction, Alistair stumbles upon a defenseless girl lying on the ground and asking for help. He sees an incomprehensible man in a yellow robe who attacked the beauty with the desire to violate her and commit lewdness. A sense of justice at this moment forced our hero to immediately order him to take his dirty hands off the innocent girl. The mysterious stranger, without thinking twice, immediately rushed towards the main character, realizing his superiority in strength. The man thrusts a dagger into our hero's chest, finally saying that it was a mistake to challenge his master's son. The main character turned out to be incredibly weak, and, dying once again, he could not believe that immediately after being reborn in another world, he would die again. Once again observing the endless emptiness before his eyes and trying to scream with all his might, he wakes up in the same place after his rebirth. Alistair quickly realized that every time he died or fell asleep, his day started over and he found himself in a time loop. He decided that in a world where there are a huge number of outstanding people, he should not remain in the background, and he went in search of power and strength. The world in which he was reborn had a huge number of ways to move, thanks to which in a matter of minutes, you could find yourself on the other side of the earth. The main character began to wander every day, visiting more and more new places, trying to survive and improving his skills. Sometimes, his wanderings took him to mythical lands where it seemed that every centimeter of the soil was saturated with magic, which was about to flare up and tear him apart. At some points, his disagreements with the inhabitants of this world drove him into extremely uncomfortable situations from which it was difficult to find a way out. During the first 10,000 years of his travels, Alistair walked around every inch of this world and learned the secrets of all families and clans. The main character was reborn in this world precisely at the moment when the era of the Emperor's reign ended, and the tribal feuds of the ruling clans became increasingly worse. Over the years spent in the time loop, the main character has found out what powers the locals have, and for the most part, they are chasing an increase in the amount of spiritual fusion, not paying attention to the rest. Due to his time loop curse, Alistair could not improve the amount of spiritual fusion in his body, but he could train his warrior embodiment and divine eye. The simplest thing in this matter was the improvement of the divine eye, because its power grew and became greater with each passing day, of which there were thousands. After a measly 50,000 years, the main character's strength was enough to cut mountains with the movement of 2 fingers. A little later, and having lived for 70,000 years, the protagonist managed to share a bed with every beauty of this world. But one day, at the moment of his 100,000th birthday, he found himself next to a princess who was talking about his exploits. The girl did not believe that the main character was already more than 100,000 years old, and that during this time he was able to defeat countless enemies. She says that she doesn't believe in this made-up nonsense and is 100% sure that it was he who poisoned her. Alistair extends his hand to her, assuring her that he is not with those who poisoned her, and asks her to follow him. The girl immediately turns around, trying to go in the opposite direction and ordering him not to even try to follow her. The main character, rolling his eyes, explains that, continuing to walk forward, in 10 seconds the girl will see the light of the torch and those who wanted to kidnap her, which the beauty, for obvious reasons, is not going to believe. Continuing to walk forward exactly after the allotted time, she sees 2 robbers in front of her with a burning torch in their hand. Shocked by what she saw, the girl cannot believe that everything that was said earlier to our main characters turned out to be true. She immediately begins to run away from the robbers towards our protagonist, asking him for help and protection. Hiding behind his back, the girl expresses her trust in him and asks him to deal with the attackers, in response receiving that everything will end in a few seconds. Having dealt with the robbers who want to kidnap the girl, the main character leads her deep into the dark forest. Making his way further and further, he asks to follow him, pointing towards a secret passage in the trunk of a huge tree. The girl expresses her fears about her safety and why the main character is sure that there is a secret passage there, to which he replies that he has done this countless times already. After which the princess, with confidence burning in her eyes, promises that if something happens to her, the main character's head will be cut off. Having gone deeper into the tree, Alistair turns a handle sticking out of the wall in the shape of the head of a toothy demon. This action opens that very secret passage, and 3 silhouettes appear in front of our heroes from a cloud of dust and fog. We see before us the same man who tried to harass the girl on the very first day of Alistair's stay in this world. These strangers turn out to be Balder, the son of one of the elders of the Wang sect located nearby. The girl immediately starts screaming at the stranger who appeared out of nowhere, saying that it was he who gave her the poison. Balder explains that it was not poison, but an aphrodisiac, after which she will not be able to resist and will do whatever he orders. At the same time, he glances at our hero, realizing that he is incredibly weak because his level of spiritual fusion is at the lowest level. In a world where only force rules, The level of a person's skills is determined by the boundaries that he was able to overcome, starting from the lowest level and ending with the highest level. As mentioned earlier, all people are chasing an increase in spiritual fusion, when in fact the Divine Eye and Warrior Incarnation are an indicator of strength. I don't sense large reserves of spiritual fusion in our main character. He orders his subordinates to kill him and bring him a girl. Two warriors dressed like ninjas rush towards Alistair, drawing their terribly sharp katanas. Having pulled out a knife from the pocket of his robe, the main character with a slight movement reflects their blows, simultaneously inflicting many injuries on them. Looking at the main Balder, the hero agrees that he is at the lowest level of the line, but nevertheless he had the strength to kill his subordinates like little animals. The elder's son clearly does not like this treatment, and he orders him to immediately apologize and stop talking to him like that. Alistair, wiping the blade of his dagger, says that even though Balder is on a higher level, he should be more respectful towards those who are on a lower level. Balder, whose face simultaneously reads fear and a feeling of rage, asks who the main character is, that he knows how strong the son of the elder himself is. The protagonist, with a calm look and burning eyes, explains that these are the words of his father, and what his son did this evening is enough to kill him. At the same moment, the main character very quickly gets closer to his opponent and inflicts a powerful slap on him in the face. Due to the difference in strength, even such a weak blow is enough to turn Balder's face into a crumpled sheet of paper with veins protruding from it. Having flown several meters back, he is at a loss as to who the main character really is and allows himself to treat him this way. Looking at his opponent, Alistair thinks about how pitiful the son of sect elder Wang is, who made a deal with the evil fort. Kneeling in front of the main character, Balder asks for forgiveness, begging him to be left alive and not killed. The protagonist throws a dagger at Balder's feet, saying that an animal like him should cut off its own paw as a sign of punishment. His face immediately begins to exude primitive horror and a plea for help, while simultaneously asking the main character for mercy and mercy. Alistair, with a straight face, says that if he doesn't do it himself, he'll have to cut off not one, but two of his hands. A few seconds later, a piercing scream is heard throughout the entire area, causing the birds sitting on the neighboring trees to fly away. Covered in tears and drool oozing from his mouth, Balder asks if this is enough while bleeding. After the main character says to get away, Balder runs away, leaving only a vile bloody trail behind him. The girl standing behind the main character all this time thanks him for her salvation and asks him to take her home. Alistair says he helped her get rid of the persecution, but the aphrodisiac in her blood is still active and needs to be neutralized. The girl's face shows embarrassment, and she asks how exactly he is going to neutralize the poison. After some time, the main character summons a huge phoenix with blue plumage and soars into the air with the princess. Meanwhile, the princess does not understand how an ordinary person at the lowest level is able to control the phoenix of the Southern Sea, since this requires at least 3 years of training. Alistair explains that he has lived here for 100,000 years and, like no one else, knows everything about everything, including how to intimidate the elder's son and how to control the phoenix. A sweet and embarrassed girl asks if the main character really wants to neutralize the aphrodisiac in her blood, because she is betrothed to the 7th demon emperor. Alistair says that he is well aware of who the emperor's demon is, and that he is the strongest on the entire continent. He asks her not to worry because he will be fine, and now they have little time left, which is only enough for 5 times. The blushing girl tries to pretend that she doesn't understand what our main character is getting at, asking what 5 times we're talking about. At that very second, her body begins to tingle and shake, and the blood through her veins begins to circulate at incredible speed. Alistair begins to panic, realizing that the effect of the aphrodisiac has begun to take effect ahead of time, and asks the girl to control herself. The princess attacks the main character, saying that she cannot wait until they land and wants to start doing it right now. The next morning, the protagonist sleeps drooling and realizing that another meaningless and carefree day has begun. Before he has time to open his eyes, he pulls his hand to the side, but accidentally stumbles upon the gorgeous breasts of the girl he saved yesterday. He immediately jumps back in panic, not understanding what is happening and asking the princess how she ended up here. The girl looks at him with tear-stained eyes, calling the main character a liar because he promised that she would return to her home in the morning. Not fully understanding what is happening, the protagonist decides to clarify what day it is today, in response to hearing the 27th of July. A few moments later, he realizes that the day in which he was stuck for 100,000 years was the 26th of July, and he finally got out of the time loop. Images of all the celestial beings, great warriors and monsters who looked down on him begin to flash in his head, and he vows to destroy each of them. His thoughts are interrupted by a girl who tries to hit him, blaming him for what happened last night and asking who will be responsible for everything. Alistair presses her to his chest, asking her not to worry because she is the only girl he remembers during his entire stay in this world and will definitely be responsible for her. The bride of the 7th Emperor raises her tear-stained eyes to him, saying that she will definitely remember these words and hopes that all this is true. Their conversation is interrupted by a woman's scream coming from the sky and promising to punish the main character for his actions. They look up and see a girl with red hair and a sword behind her, standing on a giant phoenix. This graceful and stately beauty turns out to be one of the elders of the Wang sect, whose name is Mistletoe. Looking at her, Alistair becomes disappointed in his liberation from the curses of the time loop, because as soon as one disappears, another problem immediately appears. The elder extends his palm, beginning to prepare a powerful spell called Dragon Net. The rescued girl tries to pull the main character away, warning him that if he gets caught in the net, he will never get out. The protagonist reassures her by saying that this is nothing, and with a wave of one finger of his hand, he cuts the dragon net flying towards him. At this time, Mistletoe experiences shock, not understanding how an ordinary person from the lowest level could deal with one of the most powerful binding spells. She jumps off her air transport, saying that she will definitely free the captive from the dirty hands of the kidnapper. Without giving the elder the opportunity to attack, the main character asks her if she is interested in information about where her father is. Mistletoe begins to get angry after hearing this, trying to realize who is standing in front of her and what he knows about her father. Alistair offers a deal asking her to accompany him to the territory of the Bath sect, after which he will tell her everything he knows. When asked by Mistletoe for what purpose he wants to get there, he says that this no longer concerns her and asks only to take him there. After some time, our heroes reach the temple of the Wang sect, in which a huge number of subordinates are training, who kneel when they see one of the elders. Alistair, accompanied by Mistletoe, moves to the main temple of the Wang sect and, apparently, she decided to accept his offer. The main character passing by the students of the sect hears how they humiliate him because he has the audacity to walk ahead of the elder and behaves like Balder. Noticing this, he turns towards Mistletoe and asks to get rid of these 3 talkers. One of the students grins, being 100% sure that the elder will not listen to such a commoner. At that very second, the girl draws her sword and knocks out the impudent students with a few blows. You can see red broken capillaries in the elder's eyes because she is clearly dissatisfied with the behavior of her subordinates and orders them to immediately close their mouths. After some more time, our heroes find themselves at the shining gates of the main temple of the Wang sect. Elder Mistletoe follows the main character with his gaze, trying once again to ask why he came to the sect. Alistair turns around at her words and with a full expression of confidence says that he wants to see the head of Alana. Mistletoe is amazed by such a bold demand and says that she doubts that the sect leader will find time to meet with an ordinary person from the bottom line. Also, the main character pats the girl he saved on the head, ordering her to go home and leave everything else to him, after which he again turns to the elder, asking him to convey his words to the head of the sect, because as soon as she hears them, she will immediately agree to an audience. Alistair says that unpaired meridians merge together. The 8 points of their intersection are similar to yin and yang. When the blood boils and the bones cool, everything turns out as it should. Mistletoe immediately understands that these lines must have a hidden meaning, and the young man standing in front of her is clearly a difficult person. The elder promises to convey everything exactly as he asked and says that he will return soon. Meanwhile, the main character hears the sounds of battle coming from nearby within the temple. After looking around a little, he finds students of the sect who are training and wielding a sword. He witnesses a duel between a girl and a guy, in which the lady gracefully wins. I'm trying to establish contact with the students. He asks what they do and what exactly they train in the fighting style of swordsmen. The students of the sect turned around remembering our main character and trying with horror not to make unnecessary movements so as not to anger him. While the men are shaking in horror for fear of being beaten by Elder Mistletoe, the girl who won the sword duel does not understand what is happening. Plucking up courage, she nevertheless decides to ask the stranger who appeared out of nowhere who he is. Alistair replies that his position and name are not as important as the fact that the girl is using the heavenly abundant sword technique incorrectly. Incorruptible surprise immediately appears on the student's face, and she is shocked at how he was able to notice the flaw in her technique. The protagonist advises the girl to leave her thoughts behind and surrender to her feelings, because only the form invested in the desire is transferred to the blade, and she must allow him to control her. The student is completely delighted with such incredible knowledge about the art of swordsmanship and asks to enlighten her even more. Alistair sits down on a small column, saying that he can answer all her questions for a little massage. The girl, with a frowning and slightly dissatisfied look, nevertheless decides to succumb to the protagonist's provocations and begins to massage his trapezium. The students of the sect observing all this are clearly unhappy and promise to teach our main character a lesson someday. They are interrupted by the returning elder Mistletoe, who says that the head of the sect is waiting for our protagonist in the hall. Alistair waves goodbye to his new friend, promising to teach her another time. Mistletoe, having noticed her student giving the main character a massage, reprimands her for wasting her time instead of achieving level 2 in swordsmanship. The girl explains that the person she is accompanying knows the secret of the final form of the heavenly abundance technique. Mistletoe cannot believe what she heard, realizing that the stranger she met is still too young, and heavenly abundance is a secret technique that not every elder is able to comprehend. The student begins to swing her sword at a frantic speed, emitting a huge amount of energy, saying that this is exactly how this stranger taught her to move. Looking at the movement, Mistletoe cannot believe that this is possible because it is simply incredible. Meanwhile, the main character is standing in front of a huge staircase at the end of the office. The head of the sect, Wang, is sitting. A majestic and busty girl sitting on the throne wonders how the main character knows the secret of the technique of oblivion, which is passed down from generation to generation. Alistair spreads his hands to the sides, saying that he knows not only the principle of operation of the technique, but also its weak point. The head of the sect, Alana, clearly does not like this answer, and she says that the technique has been passed on for 3,000 years and cannot have any flaws. She immediately becomes covered in purple tattoos, and a huge number of terrifying snakes emerge from her body. Alana orders the stranger to answer for what purpose he came to her temple. Otherwise, the last moments of his life will be numbered. Alistair repels the snakes attacking him with one wave of his palm, and says that he once advised her to be careful, but yesterday she got hurt while trying to perfect this spell. After his palm strike, waves of energy begin to emanate around him, and he says that if he does not provide his help, she will need 6 months to recover. In her thoughts, Alana understands that last night they really practiced at a reservoir of the highest purity, where no outsiders are allowed. But this young man somehow knows everything. Tattoos disappear from the head's face and body, and she stops attacking the main character, who continues to post information. The protagonist climbs the steps to the throne and, standing in front of Alana, says that he does not like to talk to someone looking down, and understands perfectly well that the girl is now worried about two things. The head of the sect sees the spiritual fusion of our hero, and understands that he is at the lowest level, but at the same time, his energy is incredibly overwhelming. Alistair says that the first reason is the Fort of Evil Spirits and the Palace of the Chile family, who both want to lure her sect to their side, but she does not trust both. And the second reason is that Alana cannot exceed the boundary of the cycle, and the main character offers to make a deal because she can help solve both of these problems. In exchange for fulfilling all the above conditions, Alistair asks to use the reservoir of higher frequency and allow access to it. At the same time, somewhere at the other end of the Bath sect, an old gray-haired old man scolds two bodyguards. These bodyguards turn out to be the very subordinates of the Balder, whom the main character defeated while saving the girl. They both ask for forgiveness for their actions and, on their knees, beg the master not to take their lives, which causes him to have an attack of uncontrollable rage. The old man orders them to stand up and go ahead of him to the head of the sect, promising to have mercy on them. At that very moment, his blood boils, and he launches an icy stream of energy towards these bodyguards. As soon as the icy cloud of energy reaches the target, they immediately find themselves frozen and standing absolutely motionless. A gray-haired old man, saying that useless puppies are unworthy of life, splits their bodies into small pieces of ice with a powerful blow. At the same second, his son Balder, who lost his arm, appears from around the corner and asks his father who the man he met was. The old man says that it doesn't matter to him who this guy is, but he will pay for the fact that he dared to cut off his son's hand. Balder begins to sob and drool again, begging his father to avenge his lost hand. Meanwhile, the head of the sect, Alana, agrees to make a deal with the main character, saying that she will be able to admit him to a reservoir of the highest purity. Alistair thanks her and promises to come to the pond in the evening to help her overcome her milestone. When the girl asks why they can't go there now, he turns around and looks towards the entrance of the throne room. The main character smiles and says that first of all, he will need to deal with the guests who have arrived. At that same second, the gates swing open and that same gray-haired old man, Balder's father, comes inside. This gray-haired old man turns out to be another elder of the Wang sect named Howard, who says that he has heard rumors about the kidnapping of a girl who has already been saved. Alana replies that everything is true and he has nothing to worry about because the girl is safe, And the old man, meanwhile, looks at the main character, realizing that he is at the bottom line. Alistair, meanwhile, stands looking at the old man, while radiating unshakable confidence in himself and his abilities. At that very second, asking the head if this guy is really the kidnapper, Howard rushes towards him with the desire to attack. The old man accumulates in his hand the icy energy of which he recently destroyed 2 bodyguards, intending to do the same to the main character. In the blink of an eye, Alistair dodges and finds himself behind the elder, saying that he did not expect such emotions from their first meeting. Howard can't believe his eyes, trying to figure out how this guy managed to get behind him. Meanwhile, the head of the sect, with an unshakable and confident look, wonders what the reason for Howard's visit to her chambers is. The old man asks for forgiveness, explaining his behavior by saying that it is his duty as the person responsible for security in the entire sect, and asks to take the main character away for interrogation. Alana explains that this is not necessary because if it weren't for Alistair, who knows what could have happened to that kidnapped girl. The head of the sect also orders that this young man be given the status of its viceroy and identical rights, and everyone in the territory of the sect is obliged to treat him with respect. Howard congratulates the main character for being able to gain such influence at such a young age in his head, without understanding where this brat came from. Finally, the head of Alan asks not to piss Howard off, at the same time informing him that Mistletoe will show him his chambers for the next couple of days. Alistair promises to be more restrained in the future and thanks the head for its concern. After some time, he finds himself in a luxurious 2-story estate that will serve as his temporary home. He inspects the rooms, accompanied by that same swordsman apprentice, writing compliments on the local interior. The girl bends her knee and says, since Mr. Governor is not busy with anything, she would like to get some advice regarding ball skills. The main character explains that he won't be able to do it today because there is one unfinished business that needs to be resolved first. Meanwhile, in a secret and gloomy dungeon, Balder accuses the main character of sharing a bed with the head of the sect, and that is why he deserves such treatment. He gets angry and wants to take revenge on our protagonist, telling his father that he can't just leave it like that. Elder Howard, as if not listening to his son, is wondering how a man with the lowest level of strength was able to dodge his blow. Balder interrupts his father's thoughts by saying that yesterday he gave the girl a love potion, and the main character probably noticed this and took advantage of her condition. After which he puts forward the theory that the head most likely granted him this status wanting to keep everything secret. Howard thinks about everything he has heard and understands that with such evidence he is unlikely to be able to get away with it. At that very second, their conversation is interrupted by Alistair, who appears out of nowhere and thanks them for their kind words. Elder Howard, with a smile on his face, is surprised at the courage of the protagonist because he had the audacity to invade his domain. The main character puts the old man in his place, saying that in the 30 years he spent in the Wang sect, he achieved practically nothing and, on top of everything else, encourages the actions of his son. After which Alistair takes a blue glowing ball out of his pocket and asks if the old man needs an antidote. Howard realizes that he has the antidote to the water dragon's poison in his hands and suggests that this boy could be a messenger and immediately falls to his knees. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he also orders his worthless son to kneel down quickly. Alistair says that by ordering Balder's hand to be cut off, he hoped that he would wise up. But now he sees that instead of repenting, he decided to make bad plans. The old man begins to furiously beg and ask for forgiveness, saying that he and his son were wrong and asking to give him an antidote as soon as possible, because the dragon's poison is very painful and unbearable to endure. The main character gives the strange ball into the hands of the elder, who says that from this day on, he will not act without his order. The elder puts a ball of antidote in his mouth, wondering why our protagonist gave it away so easily. After Howard takes the antidote, Alistair says that this pill was made by him personally, and if he decides to betray him, he will die immediately. At that same second, the old man feels like a huge number of chains are wrapped around his heart, and apparently the guy is not joking. After which the elder bows his head again, promising to be obedient and not violate the trust of the young master. Raising his head, he and his son notice that the main character has disappeared, and in his place there remains a small piece of smoke. At this time, Mrs. Alana is waiting for our hero near a reservoir of the highest purity. The main character appears, stands completely naked, covering his pelvis with a small towel, and says that the head will need to take off his clothes. Alana is outraged by this statement, asking him who he thinks he is talking to now and orders him not to be impudent. The protagonist says that the head does not interest him at all and can keep his dignity to himself because his goal is to help her surpass her current level of power. Alana agrees to fulfill the demands of the protagonist, saying that she will trust him and exposing her chic and beautiful body. Alistair stands behind the girl, asking her not to move and promising that everything will be painless. After a short pause, the main character begins to concentrate a huge amount of energy in his hand. Soon after, he redirects the flow of power into Alana's body, causing her to absorb all of this power. The girl begins to blush and moan loudly, realizing what a great power is penetrating her body and trying to control it. Having completed the ritual, Alistair says that the Oblivion technique only multiplies yin energy, but does not generate it. And if the head can improve it to the 9th circle, then reversion will begin. Alana wonders how long it will take her to harness yin energy. Alistair says that with his current level it will take 6 months, but he will become much stronger, so this period will be reduced because he knows that the Battle of the Mainland will take place soon. The Mainland Battle is a battle between the major sects of the entire continent for the right to enter Daohe. Daohe exists from the beginning of time and permeates the entire continent. Only the victorious sect has the right to enter and improve its forces in it. Alana says that hundreds of sects have settled on the mainland, 3 of which are recognized as the strongest, but the Bath sect is the weakest of the 3. And in truth, she wants to refuse to participate in the battle. The main character says that there is no time to give up, and he will do his best to help the head and she will succeed, and in her eyes there is a desire to sleep with him again. He also adds that their training is over for today, and tomorrow they need to meet at the same place. Trying to assess his level of power, Alistair realizes that with the help of 2 principles under his control, he was able to raise his level to a spiritual level. Returning to his chambers, the main character notices the swordswoman obediently waiting for her apprentice, who reports that a certain lady has been waiting for him for a long time. Going inside, the girl he recently saved, whose name is Zinni, immediately rushes into his arms. The main character is very happy about her appearance, and his delight knows no bounds since he did not expect to see her here. Zinnia immediately begins to describe the latest events, saying that our protagonist is incredible because he managed to achieve such a quick arrangement of the chapter itself. The girl says that Alistair looks incredibly courageous and charismatic, and in her eyes there is a desire to sleep with him again. She also adds that she is very glad that they met and reports that lately all her thoughts have been only about our main character. Chinny once again remembers that if in 2 years the 7th Demon Emperor calls her to marry, then she would prefer to die rather than allow this marriage to take place. The image of the powerful Demon Emperor pops up in the girl's head, for whom she is only one of the many brides of whom there will be several hundred. Alistair, with unshakable confidence on his face, promises to never allow this to happen because now he is responsible for her. The girl waves goodbye to him, saying that it's late and she needs to return home, and also that that girl is a swordsman and is her best friend. And smiling broadly at our protagonist, she asks him to help her with training in his free time. Their farewell is interrupted by the same apprentice swordswoman, who asks her master for permission to escort the Zinnias home. Left alone, Alistair says into the void that her student has left, and apparently someone else will keep him company tonight. As it turns out, he turns to Elder Mistletoe, who has been hiding around the corner of the building all this time. The girl realizes that her location has been revealed and decides to show up in full growth. I remind the main character to watch his words. Seeing the elder from afar, Alistair mutters to himself that it is simply impossible to forget this. As it turns out, all this time his eyes were glued to the elder's large and incredibly lush chest. Realizing what was happening, the girl immediately covered her body with her hands, asking where exactly our protagonist was staring. Going inside his chambers, Alistair emphasizes that Mistletoe herself invited the head to settle him in her estate for the sake of information about her father. The elder says that this was done necessary in order to find out and try to convince him to give all the information he knew. Alistair sits on the bed asking for company, promising that at the right time he will tell everything. The girl begins to blush and feels slightly embarrassed, asking what exactly the main character is thinking about. Plucking up courage and still managing to sit next to him on the bed, the girl asks what she should do now. The Viceroy leans back completely, lying on the bed saying that he is not going to do anything with her, after which he falls asleep in a matter of seconds, leaving the elder completely alone to digest what happened. Mistletoe still tries for some time to understand for what exact purpose he called her to him, after which she also falls asleep. The next morning, the girl sleeps peacefully, drooling into the pillow tightly clutched with both hands. Opening her eyes, she sees Alistair standing in front of the window, already making further plans for the whole day. I turn to Mistletoe. The main character asks her opinion about the upcoming battle of the continent in which they will have to participate. The girl says that with the current level of the Wang sect, if he participates, then he can't count on winning. The main character praises the girl for cutting off his assessment of the situation, but is sure that they will be able to defeat the other participants, and for this he needs helpers. Alistair reports that she will be the first on his list. For a month he will train her in the skills of a swordsman, and they will also adjust the heavenly abundance. He also reports that he is just going to see the second person on the list, at the same time wondering if Mistletoe knows Casper. The girl reports that he is the 7th elder and at the same time a very reserved person who always acts alone and lives on a mountain where he constantly trains. Alistair says that he should go to the 7th elder, asking Mistletoe to stay in the sect and save one person, and this will happen at exactly noon. The girl, slightly dissatisfied with being commanded like a small child, nevertheless agrees with the instructions. After some time, the main character, accompanied by a swordsman apprentice, moves towards the mountain where the elder is training. He explains to the girl that the elder hates it when his training is interrupted and disturbed. Turning towards the student, he asks what would happen if he forced her to fight the elder. Shocked by this offer, the swordswoman tries to refuse, saying that he is a very skilled warrior and she is no match for him. Alistair asks her not to worry because all she will need to do is fight off the first 7 blows, and then immediately use the 10th form of heavenly abundance. The girl understands that she has no right to contradict her master and promises to do everything exactly as he said. At that very second, their conversation is interrupted by a loud scream, and the main character manages to feel that something is moving towards them at high speed. At the last moment, thanks to his physical skills and incredible reactions, he manages to push the student away, after which a huge explosion was heard behind them, from which they barely managed to dodge. The swordswoman did not even have time to understand what had happened, but if the protagonist had not managed to save her, she would have already been dead. Looking back at the place where the explosion occurred, they see a large cloud of dust, and a man standing in front of them with a huge sword. The swordsman who attacked them turns out to be the 7th elder of the Wang sect, Casper, who says that this is a forbidden area and they should not have come here. Alistair interrupts her by saying that according to rumors, he is the best swordsman on the entire continent and he came to see for himself. Such words cause a sharp attack of aggression in Casper, and he asks the main character to show his skills to the fullest. The protagonist slightly cools his ardor by saying that he will have to fight not with him, but with his subordinate. The girl draws her sword, saying that her name is Darcia, and she is a disciple of the 12th elder of the Wang sect, challenging Casper to a duel. The elder clearly does not like this situation, and he cannot believe that he is being forced to fight with some girl. He immediately takes off, rushing into the attack, saying that they asked for it and there will be no mercy. His first and swift blow from the side seems incredibly powerful and crushing. Darcia manages to repel the attack, barely able to withstand all the pressure and power at the last moment, managing to get down on one knee, after which she immediately does a huge backflip trying to break the distance with the elder. Casper immediately rushes towards her, saying that since she can dodge, their duel will turn out to be very funny. He begins to shower her with a hail of blows, and the girl, with the last of her strength, manages to deflect each of them. After repelling the 6th and final attack, the girl remembers that, according to the main character, now it is her turn to attack. The elder, full of confidence, declares that the girl is clearly not a timid one and he wants to see if she will be able to hit him at least once. After these words, Darcia immediately begins to prepare the technique of heavenly abundance, raising it to the 10th form. A huge number of ghostly blades of charged energies begin to appear around her, which begin to attack the elder. Not expecting such pressure, Casper slightly lowers his guard and one of the swords manages to scratch his cheek. Realizing what was happening, he asked the main character how exactly he was able to calculate his weakness, because the girl clearly waited the required number of blows and was able to wound him. Alistair says that Soul to Soul as a single organism is the owner of the sword, and its name is the same as dragon scales. The elder cannot believe his ears, asking how exactly he knows the secret of his sword. The protagonist states that he likes weapons, so he understands them well, and one glance is enough for him to understand everything. Casper declares that all this is nonsense and he cannot believe that some guy with one glance was able to identify all the weaknesses and shortcomings in his technique. In order to confirm his words, the main character picks up an ordinary twig and says that he can defeat him in one blow. Amazed by such impudence, rage begins to boil in the elder's eyes, and he asks his opponent to show his strength. At the same second, Casper thrusts his sword into the ground from which waves of energy begin to emerge, after which a huge cloud of energy appears from the ground, shaped like an electric dragon. Our protagonist grins, saying that this is exactly what he expected, and so far there is nothing unique about it. Alistair makes a powerful swing of the twig in his hand and asks to see the 10th form of this technique. Out of nowhere, a golden energy dragon appears, several times larger in size than the first. Casper, being in complete shock, cannot believe his eyes looking at the huge golden dragon. The elder kneels, and the main character, holding a branch near his head, asks if he will admit defeat. Casper agrees that he is weak and tries to find out how exactly he learned the 10th form of this technique. The main character replies that he only improved the 7th form that the elder used and hopes that he understood exactly how, because if not, he will be very disappointed. The elder, crossing his arms, thanks Alistair for the instruction and asks him to introduce himself to who his opponent is. Before he can answer, he is interrupted by Darcia, who reports that standing in front of him is the very young man whom the head appointed as governor. Casper emphasizes that the main character is incredibly skillful at such a young age, and his knowledge of ball handling techniques is simply amazing. The protagonist reports that he is happy to share several secrets while at the same time finding out whether the elder wants to prove himself in the Battle of the Mainland. Casper states that he considers himself the strongest among the people of the 3 main sections, and in a one-on-one fight he has no equal. But since the battle is not a single fight, most likely they will lose. Alistair reports that before the battle begins, he plans to make the Wang sect stronger and also wants to find a worthy opponent for the elder. Casper is very happy with this offer and agrees to participate in the battle under the leadership of our main character. After some time, our heroes return to the main temple of the Van sect, where Mistletoe reports that she has fulfilled the request. Next to the girl stands a tall man in armor who is the 3rd elder named Louis. The man falls to his knees and begins to thank the main character for ordering to save him from a painful death. Alistair once again thanks the Mistletoe for fulfilling his request and says that they all have more important things to do. Their conversation is interrupted by Darcia, who reports that the head is organizing a general meeting and every elder of the sect must appear in the Hall of Saints. While they are walking into the hall, Mistletoe tells Louis that yesterday there was a skirmish between the Viceroy and Elder Howard and asks him to support the young man. Once at the meeting, the head informs her that she has received a letter from the Scarlet Sky Palace and tomorrow morning the master of their sect will personally come for a visit. The main character puts forward the theory that all this was done in order to test the strength of the Wang sect. The first elder, named Cameron, wearing a strange, incomprehensible mask, does not agree with this statement, saying that with the current power of the Scarlet Sky, this makes no sense. The second elder, named Mason, also agrees with him. They say that the governor thinks too superficially. At this moment, their reasoning is interrupted by Howard making a powerful strike with his palm on the table, saying that, in his opinion, there is a grain of truth in Alistair's words. The thought slips into the thoughts of the first and second elders that it is very strange that their most venerable colleague suddenly took the side of the youth. This behavior of Howard seems strange to the head, Alana, who begins to suspect the main character of illegal actions. Nevertheless, she agrees with the Viceroy, but still wonders if a master from another sect still comes, what they should do. The protagonist offers to kill a couple of people from their sect to show who is in charge. He is immediately interrupted by the 5th elder, Michael, who says that one cannot act in this way because they are much stronger and with such actions they can ruin their existence. The 4th elder of the Wang sect, Melvin, agrees with him, saying that he is also against such decisions. Howard again decides to support the governor's proposal, saying that it is excellent and needs to be struck first. Considering everything that Alistair said, Elder Casper, after waiting a sufficient amount of time, says that he also approves of such actions. This answer causes sharp surprise to all the elders, because before, Casper practically did not speak and sat silently at all councils. Deciding to stay away Mistletoe, and Louis also decide to approve our protagonist's proposal. Hearing the voices of everyone present, the head decides to ask the governor how they are going to defeat the enemies if a battle begins. The main character asks the head not to worry and promises that tomorrow they will be able to surpass them, offering to finish the meeting for today because he is a little tired. Alana agrees with the protagonist's decision, saying that the meeting is over while trying to understand why most of the elders supported him. Before everyone had time to leave, Howard catches up with Alistair, asking if he did everything well and is going to accept a new task. The main character orders the old man to kill one person this evening, and it is very important that he dies in one blow. The main character whispers in the elder's ear what exactly needs to be done to defeat the enemy with just one blow. Then he adds that if everything is done as he said, nothing will threaten him. The old man promises to carry out the instructions exactly as the young master told him and asks permission to take his leave. After a few more seconds, Elder Louis catches up with Alistair, who once again thanks him for his salvation. The protagonist thanks the elder, saying that he is very polite and his skills will definitely be useful to them during the Battle of the Mainland. Louis promises to give his best, but unfortunately, this will be impossible because his 5th-class spear was broken. Alistair says that the Elder doesn't have to worry about this because soon he will give you a new spear of the 9th category. Louis is immediately incredibly surprised, saying that in their sect, there are only angular weapons of this level, and for him, it would be a great honor. Finally, the main character orders the Elder to take care of his wounds, and when the opportunity presents itself, he will definitely receive his weapon. After the end of the conversation, Alistair finally wants to rest and says that it's time to move on to the most interesting part. In the evening of the same day, he and the head again perform the ritual near a reservoir of the highest purity. The main character decides to slightly ingratiate himself with Alana by deciding to ask why Howard is suddenly so supportive and supported him at the Council of Elders. The girl states that doubts have been creeping into her for a long time, because lately in the Van sect, everyone seems to be dancing to the tune of our main character. Alistair grins, pretending that he has nothing to do with this and this is all a coincidence, while asking whether everyone really treats him well. Alana immediately blushes and begins to feel embarrassed, covering her naked body with her hands and saying that she remains impenetrable. The protagonist understands perfectly well the fears of the head, but asks her to calm down because he arrived in their sect in order to help resolve pressing issues. He extends his hand to the side, inviting the head to come closer because he wants to tell her a little secret. The head leans in, and he whispers in her ear that Elder Howard is really a pawn of the evil fort, after which he points his finger towards the forest, saying that it is nearby and they should take a walk and look at it. The girl has no choice but to agree with Alistair, and she asks him to wait a minute because she needs to get dressed. After some time, they move towards the forest where the Elder is supposed to be. They watch as Howard beats 4th Elder Melvin with all his might. He lies on the ground bleeding from his nose and asks what is happening to the old man, why he suddenly decided to beat him. Elder Howard reports that Melvin angered someone who shouldn't have, and for this, he will die. Melvin starts screaming and trying to make excuses, saying that Howard knows perfectly well who he is and shouldn't do that. The old man reports that even though Melvin positions himself as a messenger from the Fort of Evil Spirits, he was able to see through his fraud, and the real messenger has long since arrived at the sect. After which Howard takes out his staff, saying that he will no longer be able to fool him and begins to absorb a huge amount of energy. Charging a very powerful attack, he orders Melvin to rejoice because he will go away from his mourning outburst. The old man says that it is difficult to determine who the envoy of Fort is, but the governor had an antidote, and the pill cannot be faked, so he is a real envoy. Howard stands in front of Melvin, who is lying on the ground, hoping that he has breathed his last. Meanwhile, Alistair orders Alana to sit quietly and he will answer all questions after everything is over. At this moment, Melvin turns out to be still alive and with the last of his strength tries to get up, getting down on one knee, saying that Howard has forgotten who his real owner is. He begins to shout that there is no longer any point in leaving the old man alive. His eyes turn sharply red, and his whole body is covered with protruding veins. Elder Howard is surprised that his friend is still alive and decides not to relax just yet. At the same moment, Melvin begins to use a forbidden technique. His body transforms, turning into an incomprehensible and strange monster. Old Howard says that the messenger foresaw that he would transform into the 9th form, and he was ready for it. He again begins to absorb energy, launching a mournful flash towards Melvin in the form of a huge number of blue skulls. The enraged monster begins to scream, and his eyes exude an incredible thirst for death and rage. Using his fists, he begins to fight off the projectiles flying at him with his bare hands. The chapter, observing everything that is happening from the sidelines, assumes that at this rate, Elder Howard will be a loser. Alistair decides to help the old man and grabs a stone lying nearby and throws it towards the monster with incredible force. A passing rock hits Melvin in the stomach, causing him serious damage. The old man, sensing that his opponent was noticeably weakened, decides that this is his chance to finish him off with one blow. Howard once again uses his morning flash technique and launches a swarm of blue skulls at Melvin. After receiving injuries, the monster can no longer resist and falls to the ground, and the old man is glad that everything went exactly as the messenger predicted. Howard also understands that their battle has caused a huge amount of noise, and he needs to escape from the crime scene as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the head, sitting and hiding, wants to leave quickly, but the main character stops her, saying that this is not the end. They notice how Melvin, lying on the ground in the guise of a monster, begins to show signs of life. He only pretended to be dead because he understood that the situation had seriously changed, and he urgently needed to return and report this to the Lord of Evil. Alistair immediately stands in his way, accompanied by the head, ironically saying that they ended up here by pure chance. Melvin realizes that his affairs are not going well, and in a panic begins to think about what to do. The protagonist kindly says that he will leave the head to deal with the monster, and in the meantime, he will find Old Man Howard. Alana says that they should refrain from asking unnecessary questions and begins to summon the spiritual blade. Melvin, realizing that he is now too weak to resist the head, decides that he needs to try to escape as soon as possible. Alana is not going to let the traitor go so easily and decides to prove that it is not just that she is at the head of the sect and uses her spiritual weapons perfectly. In a couple of moments, the monster's body, tormented and chopped into small pieces, falls onto the bloody ground. The head leaves Melvin's mutilated body behind him, showing with all his terrifying appearance that he holds his title for a reason. After which the girl says that she should not be underestimated because she would never allow a traitor to escape right from under her nose. At that very second, Alana feels a strange and ominous energy behind her, realizing that nothing good will come from this. Meanwhile, Melvin, chopped into small pieces, turns out to be alive and says that the chapter looks very appetizing and attractive. At this time, Elder Howard is trying to return to the sect as soon as possible so that he will not be suspected of anything. Alistair very quickly catches up with him and orders him not to rush because there is one more task for the old man. They both stop at high speed and Howard tries to find out what exactly the young master needed. The protagonist explains that Melvin only pretended to be dead and if he had not been here, this mistake would have been very costly. After which he orders Howard to go to the Lance sect and take the Phoenix Song Spear from them. Having issued new instructions to his subordinate after some time, he returns to the very place where he left Alana to fight. He notices a girl lying unconscious on the ground, realizing that her consciousness was absorbed into the mental space of that monster. At this time, somewhere in a parallel dimension filled with rivers of blood, the head of the sect is in limbo. In front of her are the transformed Melvin, who looks even less like an ordinary person. Alana immediately assumes that he is one of the 4 rulers of the fort, to which the monster replies that his master has already devoured everyone. The monster says that he hid all the assets for a very long time, and every time he saw the head in front of him, he was overwhelmed with excitement and passion. He asks the girl to accompany him and then tries to touch her breast with his hand. Before he can carry out his plan, his hand is torn off, causing an unbearable scream to be heard throughout the area. Melvin looks at the severed hand, noticing strange purple symbols on it, and realizes that these are runes from Dainichi's technique. Raising his head up, he notices Alistair, who orders him to immediately release Alana because he is just a pawn of the evil spirit's fort and is neither a human nor a demon. Looking at the main character with surprise, he is perplexed when such a skilled master capable of mastering such techniques appeared on the mainland. The protagonist advises him to find out this from the Lord of Hell, and at that very second splits his body into small pieces, leaving only blood splashes throughout the area. As soon as Melvin is defeated, the head is immediately freed from his shackles and wakes up, regaining consciousness. Alana thanks our hero for saving her, asking if this creature was actually one of the elders. Alistair says that he was still half human, and this form was the final technique for turning into a demon. The girl is shocked by what she heard, not imagining how many cards the evil spirits have hidden up their sleeves, wondering whether they will be able to withstand such a dangerous enemy. The protagonist tries to calm the head down, advising him to take care of his wounds at the moment and promising that they can deal with the Scarlet Sky Palace and the evil fort in the future. After some time and returning to his chambers, Alistair discovers Elder Mistletoe sleeping on his bed and decides not to interrupt her sweet sleep and lie down next to her. The next morning, the main character, lying in an embrace with a beautiful girl, tries to wake her up and says that the sun has already risen. The girl opens her eyes and is frightened and immediately begins to feel embarrassed, asking the main character when exactly he returned back and how they ended up in the same bed. The main character explains that he returned last night and did not do anything shameful with the elder. Going outside, Mistletoe stumbles upon her student, who reports that she arrived by order of the head of the sect and did not want to interfere with the mentor's time with the governor. Elder Mistletoe blushes slightly, saying not to make up any vulgarities because she came here a couple of minutes earlier on urgent business. Their conversation is interrupted by Alistair, saying that they have been disturbing him since the morning, and it would be better for them to go to the palace, over which clouds are beginning to gather. At this time, the head of the sect, accompanied by his elders, watches as dark clouds oozing with violet energy appear above their palace. A strange man in a mask greets the head, saying that they have not seen each other for many years, and he did not expect that they would all gather to meet him with such honors. Meanwhile, Alana is not very happy about his appearance, but nevertheless allows him to settle inside her palace. The masked man says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and he missed each of them terribly. He descends to the ground, standing opposite Elder Mason and wondering how he feels after their long-standing battle in the distant past. Mason replies that his wounds and grievances have healed a long time ago, and he does not hold any grudge against him. The masked man invites the old man to fight again, arguing that it is good practice to improve their fighting skills. Alana decides to stop this mockery and in a very rude manner finds out exactly why they came to her sect. The masked man with a very arrogant look begins to laugh, saying that he brought 4 of the worst students with him because the Battle of the Mainland is about to begin. And on the eve of such a grand event, he wants them to take a look at the prowess of the Wang sect and get it from your disciples. The disciples of the Wang sect, who were watching everything that was happening, did not understand why they should compete because they would most likely lose. Meanwhile, the head of the sect, Alana, wonders how the disciples of a masked man who arrived from another sect managed to achieve such a level of power. Elder Michael says that the masked man's name is Isaac, and apparently he believes that no one in the Wang sect can fight back. Isaac replies that he would gladly compete with all the elders of the Wang sects, but today their students will compete. These words, which clearly showed incredible self-confidence as well as arrogance towards other people, incredibly infuriated Elder Michael. Isaac starts shouting with delight and saying that this is not a place for competitions and they should go to the arena. At this moment, our main character appears behind Mrs. Alana and asks for forgiveness for his lateness. The head of the sect, realizing that the entire elite has gathered, offers to go to their arena and continue to sort things out there. After some time, all our heroes find themselves on a huge stone platform not far from the temple of the Wang sect. Arriving at the arena, Isaac notices that there is no Howard among the oldest Van sect and decides to provoke Alana by saying that they are at the same level of power. She replies that the elder is seriously ill and will not be able to attend this friendly competition today. The masked man decides not to waste time and offers to start the first battle, nominating his student as a candidate, asking her to show her what she is capable of. The formidable and muscular girl declares that she is a disciple of the Scarlet Sky sect, and she challenges the master of the Van sect to a duel. The disciples of the Wang sect standing outside the arena, looking at such a formidable warrior, in no case want to nominate themselves as candidates because they are afraid of being beaten. At this time, the elders of the sect are trying to come to an agreement and understand which of their students will emerge as the first candidate for the duel. Elder Mason kindly asks Alistair for advice and assistance in finding a suitable candidate. The echidna protagonist grins, saying that at yesterday's meeting they did not support his decisions, but now they are asking for help. The elders admit that they were wrong, and in the future they will follow the will of the viceroy at all costs. Michael, watching this situation, is in shock, realizing that his colleagues did not even turn to him for advice before asking the main character for help. The protagonist says that he does not hold a grudge against the elders, but next time they should think better about their decisions. I suggest nominating the student Darcia as a candidate. The girl, with incredible zeal, immediately grabs her blade, saying that she will try to fully live up to her mentor's expectations. Enter the arena. Darcia states that she is Elder Mistletoe's disciple, and her power level is at the breaking point. The girl with purple hair, who is her opponent, grins and says that she went out to certain death. Watching from the sidelines, the students of the Wang sect try to dissuade their friend, saying that she cannot cope with a stronger opponent. They also begin to get angry and blame our protagonist for everything that is happening, suspecting that he deliberately sent their friend to certain death. Mistletoe is also concerned about the situation in which her student finds herself and asks Alistair whether she really has the strength for which he asks her not to doubt. Energy begins to emanate from the disciple of the Scarlet Sky sect, and she says that the swordswoman has one last chance to surrender. Having received a refusal and unwillingness to lose to the formidable one, the warrior begins to absorb a huge amount of energy, preparing a powerful attack. Slamming her fist into the air, she releases a powerful blast of energy in the shape of a hand, flying towards Darcy. At the last moment, the girl manages to evade inevitable death and end up behind her opponent. Using her skills and reaction speed, Darcia prepares the Heavenly Abundance technique and brings it to the 9th form. The warrior easily manages to repel the blow using the airbell technique, which completely protects herself from attacks flying at her. You understand that this is not enough. Darcia says that this is not all that she is capable of and begins to prepare the 10th form of the Heavenly Abundance technique. The girl begins to move around the airbell at incredible speed, creating a vortex. Isaac, who is watching the fight, grins and says that the swordswoman does not have enough strength and will not be able to break through the airbell of their sect. Meanwhile, Alistair asks the head of Alana to keep a closer eye on the girl because this is not the end of the fight. Having picked the right moment, Darcy still manages to break through the defense of the air bell and reach his opponent. At the same second, a huge explosion occurs and a huge stream of air scatters throughout the arena. With this attack, Darcy manages to injure her opponent, and the girl with purple hair decides to ask how exactly she did it. The students of the Bath sect watching the fight are in complete shock because they did not expect that their sister had such skills. Mistress Alana understands that the girl has used up all her strength and says that the outcome of the battle is determined and the fight can be considered completed. Darcy immediately goes downstairs, bows to our main character and says that she did everything exactly as the governor told her. After which Alistair turns towards the Mistletoe and asks her to bring him water as his throat is dry. Noticing this, all the elders of the sect are shocked, not understanding why Mistletoe is courting the governor like that, suspecting that there is something between them. At this moment, Michael decides to joke, saying it's a pity that he is a man, since he would like to be in Mistletoe's place and also be closer to the governor. Meanwhile, the girl with purple hair says that swordswoman managed to see the gap in her defense and does not understand how she managed it. Isaac explains that it was not the swordswoman who managed to identify the very place, but the young man who stands next to the head of the sect and does not understand how he managed it. In the next one, the second disciple of the Scarlet Sky sect with green hair and huge tattoos all over his body comes out to fight. Seeing the next opponent, the students of the Wang sect again rush into horror, realizing that he is stronger than the previous girl. The head of the sect, Alana, is also very concerned about who to put up for the next duel and decides to consult with the main character. Alistair replies that he himself will fight in the next fight, and the head tries to stop him, saying that their strength is at different levels. He tells Alana not to forget that in battle she relies not only on spiritual strength, but also on other components of cultivation. At this time, the disciples of the Wang sect do not understand why the governor himself came out to fight because, in their opinion, he was only their talisman. Meanwhile, the green-haired man begins to concentrate the energy, and it takes the form of a scarlet shining tiger. Concerned, Mistletoe says that this is a high-level technique that the Viceroy cannot handle, and Casper states that it is nothing more than window dressing. Having accumulated enough energy, the same man rushes towards our main character, declaring that he has a few seconds left to live. At the last moment, Alistair manages to dodge the attack, causing sincere surprise from his opponent. Then follows a powerful blow using the power of the Divine Eye, which everyone present clearly did not expect to see. Everyone watching the battle, including the head of the Bath sect, is shocked to realize how strong our main character is. The green-haired man falls to the ground, making it appear that he was defeated with just one blow. In his head, he understands that he is not in the most advantageous situation and needs to retreat, and come up with a new plan, after which the air suddenly rises. Alistair tells him not to even think about escaping, and then pierces him with a beam of blue energy. The man begins to cough up blood and then falls to his knees, realizing that he has received a non-life-threatening injury. When he asks who our protagonist is, Alistair replies that he has already introduced himself to him before. He declares that he is an executioner for him, and that's all he needs to know, after which he pierces his body several more times with rays of blue energy. Having emerged victorious in this battle, he stands with his back to the defeated enemy, who is bleeding while lying down. An angry Isaac immediately begins to scream, calling the main character an insolent person who dared to kill his student. Alistair states that Isaac indicated at the very beginning that it did not matter whether there would be casualties during the battles, so he did not break any rules. Elder Mason, who observed everything that was happening from the sidelines, states that the skills of the governor are terrifying and he cannot even guess who his mentor was. Mistletoe says that his skills far exceed any of the elders and most likely he has no equal on the entire continent. Elder Lewis, in his thoughts, considered the Viceroy to be a resourceful person, but did not even suspect that he possessed such frightening power. Mistress Alana is surprised by more and more new forms of our main character and orders him to get down from the arena. Before leaving, the main character picks up from the floor a ring that fell from the body of the enemy he defeated. Alistair also offers to continue their fun by saying that their sect has 2 more students and they can go up to the arena. At the same moment, the disciples of the Wang sect again fall into horror because they do not know who will go next to fight on their side. Meanwhile, 2 of Isaac's students begin to ask their mentor to allow them to avenge their friend and release them to the next duel. Isaac states that they are very stupid for not realizing that one look from this person will reveal their weak points and they will not be able to cope with him. At the same moment, the girl with purple hair participating in the first duel notices that their friend's ring is missing. Isaac and the 2 students standing behind him are quite dumbfounded by this information. The main character, meanwhile, stands with an arrogant face and juggles the same ring, asking whether they will fight further. Isaac immediately turns to the head of the sect, Alana, declaring that he did not expect to see thieves among her subordinates and demands to immediately return the ring. The lady declares that she is not going to return anything because first he must provide evidence that this is in fact their ring. The main character says that if this ring really belonged to their student, let him tell what is in it. The girl with purple hair states that there are about 200,000 baht there, which in turn are the currency of this world, and can also be used to restore spiritual power. Alistair tells them to take a closer look at what exactly is there, and opens a ring from which those same baht in the form of golden balls begin to fall. He says that there are at least 500,000 baht here, and therefore this ring did not belong to him. And in his head, Alistair remembers that 90,000 years ago he found out that this guy hid money. Isaac orders the young man to immediately return the ring, otherwise he will be in trouble. Their conversation is unexpectedly interrupted by Elder Howard, who descends from the winged phoenix, saying that he has fulfilled the governor's instructions. He hands him a 9th grade spear called the Song of the Phoenix, also noting that the seal placed on it has noticeably weakened it. Alistair picks up a spear wrapped in scraps of cloth and says that he has something that will help remove the seal. He removes the cloth from the spear and sees red runes sparkling on the majestic and powerful golden spear, weakening its power. At the same moment, Isaac does not understand how the Phoenix Song fell into the hands of Howard, because the Chi sect wanted to give it to them as a sign of their submission. At the same second, a red medallion appears in Alistair's other hand, emitting suspicious, ominous energy. Isaac is even more surprised, realizing that this is the medallion of their sect and cannot find answers to how this young man knew that it was in his student's vault. The main character says that Scarlet Sky specifically placed a curse on the spear in order to get it at its disposal, and then use all its power by removing the seal. Alistair breaks the seal and begins to release all the energy of the Phoenix Song spear. After removing the seal, he makes a sharp swing and releases a huge beam of energy that pierces the sky and rushes into the distance. He gives the spear to Elder Luis, declaring that he has fulfilled his promise to give him a new weapon. Mistress Alana states that the spear must recognize its owner and is confident that Luis will succeed. The Elder begins to pour part of his spiritual power into the spear, merging with it into one whole and saying that from now on he is its owner. Meanwhile, Isaac continues to be angry, realizing that he should have first gone to the Chi sect and picked up the spear, and only then come here. Observing this situation, other elders say that they need to show their best side to the governor, and maybe he will grant them the same high-class weapons. Elder Lewis's eyes begin to glow with a bright red flame, and he says that although his weapon is very strong, he will try to handle it. At this time, Casper asks permission from the head and governor to detain the guests who have arrived to them. The main character says that this is not necessary, and also asks Isaac not to make any more plans regarding the Bath sect. Otherwise, the ending will be a foregone conclusion. The masked man agrees with this statement and then says that he just needs to find out the name of the main character. Alistair declares that Isaac is not worthy of knowing him now and asks him to get lost along with his students. After their departure, the disciples of the Wang sect begin to rejoice and bless the viceroy. Realizing that the ordeal is over, they will not have to fight. When asked by Mrs. Alana how the main character knew about the affairs of the Chi sect, he replies that Elder Howard obtained all the information and we need to thank him. The city does not understand why he suddenly received such an attitude towards his person, and wonders what kind of relationship the main character and Alana have. The head of the sect expresses his gratitude and also promises that Howard will receive a reward for his efforts. The elder immediately bows and thanks for such generous praise, realizing that he is forced to carry out all the orders of the main character, because it is he who gives him the antidote. Alistair says that he is very glad that everything is over and asks the 3 elders to follow him because he has one more thing to do. After some time, the main character gives the elders a piece of paper on which the ingredients that need to be obtained are written. They carefully study everything that is written on it and proudly declare that the governor can rely on them. At this time, Alana realizes that the main character has a new plan and asks why the objects that she must bring are intended for murder. Alistair asks the lady to be patient and also asks to order his sister to come to the reservoir of the highest frequency. The girl says that she is still just a baby and hopes that the protagonist will not do anything bad to her. The main character is surprised that Alana calls her sister baby and looking at her magnificent breasts and declares that in some places she is far from small. Then she grins and says that compared to you, she's really not that old. The girl immediately blushes and begins to feel embarrassed. They say that Alistair is such an impudent person and he infuriated her incredibly. Sometime later, when night falls, The main character in the company of Darcy goes to a reservoir of the highest purity. The girl is embarrassed looking at the half-naked governor and promises to protect him while he performs the ritual. Having entered the pond, the main character greets the girl in it and asks what brought her here. The princess who was in the pond, whom he saved at the very beginning of his story, says that the elder sister said that the governor would come to the reservoir. The girl rushes into his arms, and the main character asks that her best friend is nearby. The princess praises our hero, saying that she heard how he taught the people from the Scarlet Sky Palace a lesson, because since their last meeting he has become much stronger. Alistair looks straight into the eyes of the slightly embarrassed beauty, asking where, in her opinion, he is the strongest. The girl replies that he is strong and incredible in everything, and then merges with him in a passionate and tender kiss, after which they become one, and the princess begins to gently and loudly moan with pleasure. Darcia, who is nearby, perfectly hears the sweet moans, causing a slight blush to appear on her face. After some time, the princess throws a towel over herself, saying that it is time for her to leave. After saying goodbye to the girl, Alistair takes out the ring of one of Isaac's students and says that it is time for the next stage. He opens the vault and begins pouring a huge amount of bot directly into the pond. He begins to release the spiritual power stored inside these spheres and then absorbs their contents into his body. At the same moment, a huge amount of energy begins to accumulate in the sky above the reservoir, causing thunder discharges. The nearby swordswoman Darcia suggests that a natural disaster has struck their sect. A few seconds later, thunderous lightning sharply rushes towards our main character. And Darcy at that moment decides to save the governor and immediately rushes towards the lightning, trying to repel it. The girl immediately tries to use the 10th form of the abundance technique and cope with the terrifying elements. Her strength turns out to be insufficient. Her body is struck by a powerful electric discharge, throwing her to the side. Located in the main temple of the sect, Casper tries to guess who exactly caused the hurricane. And the head of the sect, Alana, realizing that the governor is there, sees that this lightning strike exceeds the power of the boundary of the cycle. A moment before lightning strikes his body, Alistair raises his hand up and manages to subjugate the element by taking it into his hands. Acting with incredible composure, he also manages to catch a girl falling from the sky. Darcia thanks the viceroy, and he orders her to sit down and concentrate as he uses the power of thunder to help her surpass the second milestone. The girl, without any hesitation, begins to fulfill the request of the main character and begins to absorb energy in the lotus position. The main character performs the same ritual with her as with the head of the sect, releasing a huge amount of energy into the girl's body, making her moan with pleasure. Alistair says that her level is the 3rd stage of the cycle boundary, and she was able to skip one thanks to her diligence in improving her fencing techniques. He also orders the girl to stay here while her body is rebuilt, and when she comes into balance, let her find him. After some time, he again meets with 3 elders who apparently fulfilled his instructions. Casper says that when he saw that the clouds were gathering over the pond, he immediately realized that the main character was there, and then held out a bottle with the blood of a fiery beast. Mistletoe says that she managed to get the vein of a winged dragon, and also notes that its properties are extremely useful in cultivation. Lewis enthusiastically presents the main character with the trunk of the great tree. They say that if you add it to the previous ingredients, the effect will have an extraordinary effect on increasing the level. Alistair thanks everyone for the work done. He understands perfectly well that all these natural materials are perfect for improvement, but he can use them for other purposes. After which the main character goes to the hall of the head of the sect, which also managed to get the necessary materials. The girl says that she fulfilled his request and puts on the table a small dagger inscribed with runes, as well as a piece of fabric with unknown symbols. Alistair picks up this very piece of fabric and says that the talisman of Samsara is extremely good and he expected less. Realizing that the head of the sect has a lot of questions, he allows her to ask him anything she wants. Alana says that she carefully studied the books regarding the materials that he requested and makes an interesting assumption. The protagonist immediately agrees with the girl, saying that she thinks correctly and he needs subordinates of a very high level. The main character uses his power and combines all the materials he has received into one whole. He begins to pour his energy into objects, not being entirely sure whether his experiment will be successful. If the ritual fails, not only will he be left empty-handed, but all this power will turn against him. After which there is a powerful surge of energy, and in place of the objects, a strange doll resembling a person appears. Her frightening, menacing appearance immediately changes, and she begins to grimace, greeting her master. Mistress Alana, clearly not expecting such an effect, asks if this is really the same high-level puppet. Alistair replies that although she is not very beautiful, he still managed to accomplish what he had planned. He uses the ring on his hand to open the vault, saying that there is still work to be done and the puppet is not perfect. He places the doll inside the ring, telling the head of the sect not to pay attention to its appearance because, with its help, she will be able to improve in the future. The main character is about to leave. They say that he finally wants to find the elders, and also adds that Mrs. Alana is no longer his rival and she needs to overcome the free line as soon as possible. At this time, the elders are fighting in the forest, practicing their fighting skills and preparing for the Battle of the Mainland. Their training is interrupted by Alistair asking them to give him some time because he has an important announcement. Mistletoe immediately jumps in, deciding that the governor again needs to carry out some kind of assignment, or that he has managed to notice mistakes in their training. The main character says that he came here so that they could practice a little together and asks Elder Lewis to demonstrate his skills with a spear. The man states that since the main character is his savior, he will not dare to raise his hand to him and start attacking. The protagonist states that he himself is asking for a full-fledged battle, and if he suddenly gets hurt, then we'll talk about this topic. Elder Lewis agrees with the will of the protagonist and immediately lunges in his direction. To the surprise of everyone present, Alistair manages to block the spear attack by squeezing the tip with 2 fingers. He makes fun of the elder, saying that he had a bad lunch today and should not be embarrassed to give his best. The elder immediately releases all his power and the power of the Phoenix Spear and tries to attack our protagonist again. At the last moment, Alistair manages to dodge the attack and bring his index finger right to Lewis's face, after which he puts a small amount of strength into his hand and throws the elder in the opposite direction. Holding a Phoenix Spear in his hands, he orders all the elders and the swordswoman Darcia to attack him at the same time. Lewis warns the protagonist that the spear recognizes only its owner, and if he uses it, its power may turn against him. The main character says that Louis should worry about how to get his weapon back and immediately makes a powerful attack, simultaneously hitting everyone present. This blow turns out to be a technique called the triad, which our protagonist was able to easily use after reaching the spiritual milestone. At this very second, after using that very technique, thunderclaps of lightning begin to form in the sky above our heroes. Alistair notes that if he managed to cause thunder to roll again, then the triad is a very amazing technique. Without having time to turn around, one of the ball lightnings immediately rushes towards our protagonist. All the elders immediately rush towards the terrible elements, trying to protect the governor from imminent death. At this time, the disciples of the Bath sect, who are located near the temple, notice the horror happening in the sky and cannot even imagine what is happening there. The main character grins, realizing that even the heavens are against him developing at such a fast pace. He begins to laugh loudly, looking into the heavens. They say that death awaits the violator of universal laws, but unfortunately, no one is able to stop him. After the storm subsides, he returns the spear to Lewis, praising them for fighting hard against the thunder, as it was a good chance for their advancement. After which he declares that he still has some work to do and orders the elders to continue their hard training. In the evening of the same day, he again finds himself at a reservoir of the highest purity together with Alana, who asks whether the storm that recently occurred was his fault. Alistair states that the head of the sect has nothing to worry about because he will not allow anyone to suffer because of him. Mrs. Alana informs our protagonist that tonight an auction will begin in the capital, which will last 2 days, and he should try his luck. The main character notes that the capital is a commercial city of the mainland and a place of constant gatherings of the nobility. The girl says that the highlight of the program will be the egg of a mystical beast, but no one knows what kind of creature is in it. Alistair agrees that this is a very interesting idea and asks how many bats the Van sect currently has. The lady says that they have about 100 million baht in their treasury and invites him to participate in the auction. The protagonist states that he himself wanted to go to the capital to get the materials necessary for the puppet, as well as to get the Daohei key. He also explains to Alana that if they win the Battle of the Mainland, they will only be able to get to the upper tier of Daohei. But there is another one and there is a person on it who needs to be freed. The girl can't believe her ears and tries to find out how exactly he found out that there was a person there and who he was. Alistair replies that the secret of this world is far beyond their imagination, and it is time for him to prepare to leave. When asked by the head who the main character will take with him on the trip, he replies that he will go there alone, because he has an old friend there. He also orders Mrs. Alana to overcome the free line in his absence because the battle will be extremely dangerous. The next morning, the protagonist is seen off by the elders on his way to the capital, and he boards a huge flying ship. Finally, he once again expresses the hope that everyone understood his instructions, and upon his return, they will be on a completely different level. Darcia and Elder Luis bow, saying that the Viceroy has nothing to worry about and wish him a good journey. Our main character moves on a flying ship towards the capital, and at one moment flies over the very place from the beginning of his story. He sees a huge magical sphere and 4 stone statues guarding it. He asks him to wait a little because he will soon return and free him. He also notes that in his current state he can use his Dainichi technique. Alistair's body is covered in purple flame because Dainichi uses a rare method of improving the body, contributing to its rapid improvement. The main character remembers that right now he is flying on a wooden ship towards the capital, and the whole ship also suddenly begins to blaze with a violet flame. The protagonist jumps off the ship in the hope that on the way to land, he will be able to stumble upon someone's ship. Flying several thousand meters, he notices a ship on the deck of which there are people discussing something. Landing on the deck of the ship, he calls his name, saying that his ship was wrecked and asks to be taken to the capital. A girl standing nearby with blue hair and an expressive neckline declares that she is the owner of the ship, and the men standing behind the main character want to take away her ship. Alistair points his finger at them and says that he can easily deal with them. At the same time, I notice that this is the girl, his old friend Brittany. She slightly doubts the strength of our protagonist, stating that he just fell from the sky and is unlikely to be able to deal with the robbers. One of the robbers shouts that if the stranger wants to live, he shouldn't poke his nose into someone else's business. Alistair turns in his direction with an arrogant look, asking who exactly is threatening him with violence. The man replies that he is the deputy chairman of the Flying Clouds Trade Union, and everything that happens here is their personal business, after which he asks who our main character is. Alistair again uses the violet flame technique, saying that the dead have no need to know his name. The man's body immediately begins to burn, and he is gradually covered in terrible technology. He falls to his knees and begins to beg for mercy, saying that he will do whatever he is ordered to do, asking him to put out this flame. The main character doesn't even look in his direction. He says that it's too late, and only death awaits him. After dealing with all the robbers, the main character picks up the vault rings remaining from their charred bodies. Brittany immediately rushes to thank the stranger who saved her and her ship. In exchange for his help, Alistair asks to give him all the rings of the vault left by the robbers. The girl, of course, does not object and orders her subordinates to immediately collect and bring the rings to the master. She hands him 2 rings in her hands and once again thanks the stranger for his help. Alistair understands that after he interrupted the time loop, the whole world began to change a little and decides to ask Brittany if she is on her way to the capital to participate in the auction. The girl doesn't understand how he knows her name, but decides not to show it and says that she would love to take part in the auction, but their trade union doesn't have that much money. Their conversation is interrupted by a small white-haired girl who looks out from behind Brittany and asks the main character to play with her. Brittany immediately turns towards the little girl, calling her Shani and telling her not to pester strangers. The main character turns out to be quite surprised because he did not expect to meet this child here and wants to be in the capital as soon as possible, and also decides not to refuse the little girl. After some time, their ship still finds itself flying over the walls and houses of a huge city. Britain informs Alistair that flights over the capital are prohibited, and since their trade union is small, they will not be able to drop anchor only at the small gate. The main character remembers that in order to pass through the main gate, you need to pass a strength test, but people who are able to withstand the pressure of a height of 5,000 meters can be counted on one hand. At the same moment, his thoughts are interrupted by a huge ship flying over their small ship, moving towards the main gate. Brittany immediately orders everyone to move away, because this is the ship of the Thundercloud sect, and if they displease them, then everyone will die. Standing on the deck of the ship, the head of the Thundercloud sect, Ray, orders everyone to stay away from him and not interfere with the test. Alistair declares that he doesn't want to listen to this boy's nagging, and the girl at that moment asks for forgiveness and says that they need to fly away. Meanwhile, the Stormcloud ship lands and Ray asks everyone to watch its power because it is going to set a new record. At this moment, the old man with a cane in his hand says that the head of the Thundercloud is so young, but has already reached the turn of the whirlpool, and perhaps he can actually demonstrate something miraculous during the test. Alistair notices that the elder is mistaken, because this test is not related to the strength of Ki. The head of the capital, whose name is Burton, was never close in level to this boy, but during the test he was able to withstand a pressure of 9,000 meters. Brittany immediately asks the main character a question about measuring a person's strength, and asks how much the strength of Ki reflects the quality of cultivation. The main character explains that the amount of energy accumulated in the body is only part of a person's total strength, but cultivation is a complex manifestation of the abilities of the one who uses the power of Ki. When using abilities, energy is consumed, But if you rely only on its reserves, forgetting about improvement, then all that this person will have is this energy, which he will not be able to realize in any way. He also says that the test here actually tests the ability to control power, which is why for many years no one has been able to break the record of the head of the capital. The elder is still sure that the head of the sect is a real genius, and saying that towards him is too rude. Meanwhile, Ray stands in front of the main gate and sees a huge stone slab in front of her. He jumps onto this platform, ordering everyone to watch his strength because today he will break the record. The guards standing at the gates of the capital mark the beginning of the test and ask everyone to be extremely careful. Ray begins to put his power into the slab he is on, and two golden beams of energy shoot into the sky. Followers of the Thundercloud sect, located on the ship, watch their master and count the number of meters to which the rays rise. Meanwhile, the elders order Brittany to go and greet the young master because, who knows, maybe he will help them in the future. The girl clearly turns out to be slightly saddened because she does not want to come into contact with such a person and expresses her disagreement. The old man declares that after the death of his student, she behaves inappropriately, because every year their fleet becomes smaller and only she remains of the entire crew. An old woman standing nearby orders not to put pressure on the young girl, saying that if she doesn't want to, they will go to negotiations themselves. At this moment, Ray, who continues to undergo the test, already understands that his strength is at its limit, and he has only reached 4,000 meters, and this is a real shame. At this moment, he is interrupted by two elders who express their respect and are also surprised at the young master's abilities. Ray laughs, realizing that all his thoughts were focused on how to avoid shame, and a way out of the situation was found on its own. He immediately grabs the two elders by the throat, amazed at how they had the audacity to break his concentration, and they deserve to die. Brittany immediately tries to stop him, but the students of their trade union manage to stop her, saying that he will destroy the entire ship if he gets angry. The head of the Thundercloud sect mocks the bodies of the old people, saying that he would have broken the record if they had not stopped him. At the same moment, he raises his head into the sky and notices another ship flying over the capital and arriving in the city. On the deck of the ship stands the daughter of the head of the capital, whose name is Vanessa, and behind her is her subordinate. This gentleman turns out to be one of the students of the Ice Sky Temple and asks the lady not to waste time on this rich man. Vanessa says that she is interested in the flying cloud ship, which is located near the main gate. She asks to pay attention to our main character, who did not bat an eye and exuded amazing composure while watching the death of his people. The man assumes that he is frozen with fear and decides to force this ostentatious insolent to show his true face. He decides to provoke the head of the sect with a thundercloud, saying that his concentration was disrupted by people from a third-rate union. Aggression immediately appears on Ray's face because he is well aware that he could not break the record in any case. He points his finger to the sky and orders the ship of flying clouds to descend immediately. Brittany immediately begins to apologize and ask Mr. Ray for mercy because her people had no intention of stopping him. The head of the Thundercloud sect exudes bestial rage, saying that they themselves must understand that after this incident, they do not have long to live. His speech is immediately interrupted by that same little white-haired girl, who shouts that he is a fool and they are not to blame for his failure. At the same moment, their ship begins to fire at a huge number of energy flares. Ray points out that the trade union little one is too daring, and he declares that he is giving them a challenge that they dare not refuse. He is rapidly moving towards their ship with the desire to smash it into small pieces and destroy every member of the crew. All people begin to suddenly panic and lose control of the ship, realizing that certain death awaits them. Vanessa immediately decides that they need to get help, but the man behind her dissuades her, saying that there is no need to worry about this bunch of insects. Watching everything that happens, Alistair realizes that this whole situation is just wasting his time. He immediately disappears in the blink of an eye right before the eyes of Ray moving towards their ship. Before he even realizes what happened, the head of the Thundercloud sect receives a powerful kick to the face. Alistair knocks him out with one blow and causes his body to fall towards the main gates of the capital. Everyone present, including the daughter of the head of the capital, Vanessa, who is watching all this, is shocked. Brittany at this moment understands that she herself, along with her ship and crew, survived death and calmly exhales. Ray's body reaches the ground and crashes into one of the walls of the capital, and the main character takes a place on that very slab to pass the test. The main character looks at the head of the Thundercloud sect with contempt, telling him that he wants to demonstrate something incredibly exciting. He begins to concentrate his power, realizing that the characteristics of his body are unremarkable, and the internal strength in him is not that great. But with the help of spiritual fusion, he can achieve results. At the same second, a huge beam of light rushes into the sky, illuminating the entire capital with its radiance. Watching the members of the Thundercloud sect, they can believe their eyes. One of the students manages to notice that the light pole has already risen 8,000 meters and is about to break the record of the head of the capital. At one point, everyone who watches what is happening falls into even greater shock, realizing that the pillar has crossed the 10,000-meter mark. Alistair realizes that he put on a small show and forced all the people of the capital to pay attention to him, exuding a colossal amount of energy. At this moment, Ray, who is nearby, begins to cough up blood and tries to withstand the pressure that our protagonist exudes. Everyone present asks the gentleman to stop because the head of the Thundercloud sect simply cannot withstand such an aura and will die, so he needs to be dragged away. One of the elders of the Thundercloud sect also stands up for his master, ordering the main character to stop immediately. Alistair, with an arrogant and imperturbable look, says that it makes no difference to him whether he dies or survives. At this time, inside the capital, one of the elders is informed that someone managed to break the record of the head of their city. The man does not believe his ears and immediately decides to personally go outside and check what is happening, seeing with his own eyes a huge beam of light. He notices that the pillar has reached a height of 20,000 meters and assumes that the descendants of outstanding ancestors have arrived. The elder immediately orders to inform everyone that no one dare touch the person inside the pillar of light. Meanwhile, Alistair stands next to the corpse of the head of the Thundercloud sect and asks him to be removed from here. The elders and sects immediately begin to blame the Flying Cloud Trade Alliance and orders them to prepare for death. The union workers immediately begin to make excuses, saying that this gentleman killed the head and they have nothing to do with it, because he is not one of them. Brittany immediately orders everyone to shut up, because if he had not saved them, they would have been dead a long time ago. Little Shani also takes the side of the main character, saying that she will protect her brother at the cost of her own life. Alistair immediately returns to the ship, patting the little girl on the head and promising that he will be okay. He also addresses all present members of the trade union, declaring that if anyone is against him being here, let them come forward. Meanwhile, the elders of the Thundercloud sect are preparing powerful equipment to destroy the ship on which our main character arrived. Two elders, having prepared a powerful bolt of lightning, move towards the ship, declaring that everyone present will be dead. Vanessa immediately stops them, declaring how dare they start fights on the lands of the capital. The elders realize that the eldest daughter of the head is in front of them and say that their master, who arrived at the auction, has just been killed, and they demand an explanation. Vanessa, with a menacing and imperturbable look, asks what will happen if there is no explanation. The elders respond that they will have to learn that a thundercloud is not to be trifled with. At the same moment, one of the oldest of the capital appears, accompanied by guards, saying that they allow themselves too much, after which they bow to the eldest daughter Vanessa and apologize for being late. And the girl replies that along the way she was thrown by a ship of the icy sky, so she arrived earlier. The girl tells the elder that, in her opinion, the thundercloud does not want to take part in the auction and needs to be escorted from the capital. The elders take the body of their leader and promise that their sect will never forget this, after which Vanessa descends on a lotus flower to our main character and asks to know his name. At the same moment, all the union workers try to explain that they are seeing him for the first time, and he is not one of their members. Brittany immediately tries to take responsibility by saying that this person is her friend and she is ready to take full responsibility. Vanessa decides to clarify and asks again that none of these three people are members of the union. The workers breathe a sigh of relief and continue to insist that this is the first time they have seen these people. At this moment, Brittany's face shows despair because she understands that her years of effort and torment have gone down the drain. After everything she has heard, the daughter of the head of the capital declares that this trio of people will become honorable guests of the capital, and rooms will be prepared for them in the guest house. Brittany and little Shani are in complete shock and bewilderment from what is happening, not understanding what is happening. As they leave and move towards the capital, union workers shout after them, asking to take them with them. The girl replies that the trade union has turned its back on her, and from now on she wants nothing to do with flying clouds. Alistair offers to help drive away these traitors, but Brittany thanks him for the offer, saying that it is better for them to live and live. After some time, Vanessa accompanies our heroes inside the capital and shows local attractions. At this moment, the man from the Ice Sky sect realizes that his plan has failed, and how dare this stranger come so close to Vanessa. The daughter of the head of the capital is trying to find out once again the name of our main character. Alistair leans close to her ear and orders her to take her time, and also to inform her father that his sworn enemy has arrived. Having given a task to a young girl, he decides to go with Brittany and Shani to the guest temple. The elder offers to send guards to them, but Vanessa replies that if he managed to raise the pillar to 20,000 meters, the guards are powerless here. The elder understands the hopelessness of this situation and begins to sweat heavily and pray that nothing will happen. After some time, our heroes find themselves in front of the gates of a huge golden temple located right in the heart of the capital. Walking inside, Alistair asks one of the servants when the auction will start, and in response, I receive that it will start in 2 hours. While waiting for the auction to start, our main character decides to rest and lie on the bed looking at the storage ring, which he was able to take from the head of the Thundercloud sect. His thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door, and the servant informs him that Vanessa wants to meet him. The girl comes inside and asks the young gentleman to introduce himself again, since he still hasn't learned his name. The main character answers his name in parallel, looking at her beautiful body and realizing that it is not for nothing that she is one of the top 3 most beautiful girls on the continent. When asked by the girl which sect he came from, Alistair replies that she did not have the chance to meet all the masters and he will be expecting the head of the city tomorrow. Vanessa turns out to be very surprised because she doesn't understand how the main character knew that the head of the city was leaving tomorrow because only the elders knew about it. The protagonist laughs and is told that he knows much more than she could imagine and asks to leave him alone. The girl is dumbfounded by such impudence because for the first time in her life a man kicks her out of the room. Vanessa, furious, leaves, leaving the main character alone and looking after her. Alistair realizes that over 100,000 years, he has learned well what kind of person she is. When asked by the gentleman from the Ice Sky sect who this stranger is, the daughter of the head of the capital rudely orders not to pester her with stupid questions. The man is completely shocked because he has never seen a girl so irritated and assumes that the main character has done something indecent with her. One of the sect members is waiting for an order to deal with him, but the man stops him and orders him not to run into trouble because he must wait until the end of the auction. After some time, Brittany enters our protagonist's room and says that she is accompanying the girl to her confidant. She explains that they should go to 3rd Street because that's where their colleagues live. And Shani asks Alistair if he will come to visit her because the people who buy it are creepy. Having heard this, the main character is in complete shock because he thought that the girl would be taken to her parents and they would be sold as a commodity. Brittany says that she herself did not know that things were this way, to which Alistair says that he will go with them. Moving along the streets of our city, the heroes hear strange screams coming from nearby and decide to check what happened there. Entering one of the establishments nearby, they see how some bandits are beating members of the Merchants' Union. Brittany immediately decides to stand up for her former subordinates, ordering them to immediately stop and pay for all losses. A man with an eye patch, who apparently is their captain, asks the girl who she is. Confused, Brittany does not know how to answer this question because she herself left the Union a few hours ago. One of the people of the Union on which the head of the robbers sits states that this girl is their chairman and the cargo was under her responsibility. The robbers grin and say that she looks very tasty, and the main thing of them asks to bring her to him. Brittany turns out to be not the most defenseless girl and, with the help of her technology, repels several robbers. The gang leader declares that the girl is very capable and decides to start attacking her himself using the Shadow Fist technique. Brittany tries to block his attack with her palm out and using the most basic defensive technique. Her strength turns out to be insufficient and her body is thrown back. Finally, she manages to say that it is forbidden to attack other people. The leader of the robbers laughs, saying that the one who is stronger wins and they are just a bunch of weaklings. The main character covers the girl with himself, asking her not to worry because he will take care of everything. Alistair uses the technique of air swords and attacks the attacking robbers with them. Self-confident bandits find themselves in an instant pierced by energy balls flying at them. Their entire gang of robbers suffers a crushing defeat and, lying on the ground, slowly bleeds to death. As they leave, our heroes are stopped by members of the trade union, who ask Brittany to take them back, and this time they will be devoted to her to the end. The girl says that she has already said that their paths have now diverged and she is no longer part of their union. At the exit from the establishment, our heroes are noticed by a mysterious man in a red and at the same time elegant robe. Looking at the main character, he orders his subordinates to get to know him, but to do without hostility. Moving further and further along the city streets, Alistair orders the girls not to stray too far from him in order to avoid such troubles. After some time, the main character notices that Brittany liked a small bracelet in one of the stores and invites her to buy it. He asks the merchant standing behind the counter how much this bracelet will cost. A flattering and friendly seller, in anticipation of easy money, names the price of 3,000 baht. Brittany is about to leave, saying that it is too expensive, but Alistair immediately takes out the money and pays for the purchase. At the same moment, he is interrupted by Vanessa, who appeared out of nowhere and also liked this bracelet. The Ice Sky sect member standing behind her says that if she liked him so much, he will give her a gift. Vanessa says that she also really liked this bracelet and asks the main character to give it up. Passers-by watching what is happening from the side say that our protagonist is very lucky because the daughter of the head of the city is very favorable to him and he will go far. Alistair picks up the bracelet and says that he is very sorry, but he already has an owner, and then puts it on Brittany's hand. Little Shani immediately begins to smile and say that this decoration suits her sister very much. After such an action, an unprecedented shock immediately appears on the face of all passers-by because they do not believe that anyone could refuse the daughter of the head of the capital. Vanessa simply looks at the main character with confused eyes because this has never happened to her before. The girl is about to leave, but a member of the Ice Sky sect stands up for her, trying to stop Alistair. The main character states that he paid the advertised price for it and this bracelet belongs to another girl. The man immediately takes out a huge amount of baht from his vault, intending to make a generous offer. He points his finger at the bracelet and asks to sell it for 100,000 baht right here and now. Brittany understands that this is a very good exchange, but still decides to remain silent, waiting for Alistair's reaction. The main character with a straight face declares that this amount of money will not be enough. Passers-by watching this theatrical performance are once again shocked, realizing that for our protagonist, there are no authorities. The Ice Sky section member continues to up the ante and dumps even more money on the ground. The merchant who sold them this bracelet, standing behind the counter, advises the main character to agree, because this is a huge amount of money. Alistair shrugs, saying that this is still not enough, pretending that he doesn't care what amount his opponent offers. The man begins to get angry and lose his temper and decides to directly ask at what price he is willing to sell this jewelry. The main character names a price of 100 million, which once again shocks all passers-by observing this situation, because for that kind of money you can buy all the shops in the capital. The members of the sect are immediately seized with rage, and he asks who the main character thinks he is, who just stands there and mocks him. Alistair chuckles and compares the sect members to the recently departed head of the Thundercloud sect, Ray. The man understands that he cannot cope with him alone because their strength is at different levels, after which the main character turns around and simply leaves, leaving Vanessa and her companion in splendid isolation. The daughter of the head of the city experiences incredible emotions that she had not felt until today, trying to understand who exactly the protagonist is. Moving further towards the auction, Brittany asks why the main character refused to sell the bracelet for 1 million baht, to which he receives the answer that it was a gift, and he could not dispose of it. The girl shrugs her eyebrows in her head, realizing that if she had known this before, she would have gladly sold this jewelry. Once at the gate where the auction will take place, our heroes are stopped by the guards, who say that their invitation has expired. Confused, Brittany is surprised, saying that she had no idea that the invitation had an expiration date. The guard rudely repeats once again that they will not let them through and their invitation is no longer valid. Alistair suggests not arguing with the guards and just waiting near the entrance to the hall. The girl assumes that everything is in order with the invitations and most likely someone bribed the guards so that they would not let them through. Alistair agrees with her guesses and asks her to guess who exactly might be behind this. Brittany suggests that it could be Tony, the same man from the Ice Sky sect, adding that he has been trying to hit on Vanessa for a long time and the main character humiliated him. Little Shani asks Alistair if they will be allowed inside, and he, patting her on the head, asks her not to worry, because soon the one who will take them inside will appear. After some time, the same man who saw our heroes being attacked by robbers appears at the gate. Brittany turns out to be a little scared when she asks Alistair if he was really waiting for a man from the pure palace of heaven. The main character, without the slightest shadow of doubt, answers that this is exactly what he was waiting for. The girl explains that this is a first-class sect, which is much more powerful than flying clouds in the icy sky. And they also say that one of the 3 emperors of the upper system began his journey with this sect. Alistair agrees with her reasoning, also noting that the Black Dragon actually trained there, causing the girl surprise because she does not understand how the main character knows the real name of the emperor. A man in a red robe notices our heroes and wonders why they look like they weren't allowed in. The man comes closer to our hero, introducing himself by the name Russell, saying that they met in a tavern, to which the main character thanks him for settling the situation. Russell notes that the main character's strength corresponds to the level of the free line, and this is a very good indicator, and also asks whether he will go to the auction. The main character reports that he wanted to be there, but the guards stopped him, saying that his invitation was no longer valid. The guards, watching everything that is happening, understand that it is better not to delay it, and accuse Tony, a member of the Ice Sky sect, of sending them to certain death. Deciding not to aggravate the situation, they immediately run up to Russell and ask him for treatment because they didn't know that this stranger was his friend. Russell glances at them, declaring that this is unprecedented impudence, after which the ground begins to crack under him. The guards continue to beg for forgiveness because they did wrong, while an incredible aura and energy emanates from Russell, and he doesn't even move. The man declares that Tony is an incredible liar and a very petty person, and then invites Alistair to follow him to the auction. While our heroes pass through the gate, the guards do not dare raise their heads, still continuing to kneel. Raising their heads, they begin to cough up blood as Russell's mere presence caused them a huge amount of damage. Finally, once inside the auction hall, a huge arena filled with people opens in front of our heroes. Russell decides to ask the main character what exactly he thinks about the auction hall. Alistair, in turn, decides to behave very delicately and says that first he wants to hear the master's thoughts. Russell says that in this hall there are 5 steps that correspond to the 5 elemental elements, and if activated, even those on the free line will instantly die. His bodyguards notice that their master has begun to better appreciate the details, and very soon they will all be able to resist him together. The main character behaves confidently and very calmly says that Russell is mistaken, because if activated, he will have time to take a couple of breaths. Such an answer quite surprises the man, as well as his bodyguards, forcing him to treat the main character with greater caution. Their conversation is interrupted by Tony appearing, calling the main character a bastard, because the existing tactics were personally developed by the head of the capital, while simultaneously trying to understand how exactly the main character was able to get into the auction. When Russell asks why he thinks this is nonsense, he does not answer that the main character allows himself to say all sorts of nonsense, and for some reason believes that there is a gap in the security system of the auction. Russell orders Tony not to open his mouth over trifles if he himself does not know. Then it is better to remain silent. Tony begins to bare his teeth, asking that he cannot contradict the pure palace of the Celestial Empire, and now even some crooks. He points his finger towards our main character, saying that he is a worthless person who only knows how to hide behind the backs of others. Russell immediately interrupts his insult with a loud cry, declaring that he should not dare to speak like that towards our protagonist, after which he launches several energy attacks towards Tony, wanting to teach him a lesson and put him in his place. The man covers his face with his hands, declaring that not only Russell has defenders, Tony is immediately covered by several guards who take the blow. Atney declares that he is going to teach this young man a lesson, and this does not concern Mr. Russell. Russell immediately launches several more energy attacks in their direction, declaring that they are acting very recklessly. The guards protecting Tony ask their master to stop because their reserve of strength is already at its limit. At this same second, it turns out that one of the attacks still managed to reach Tony and slightly hit him, after which Russell reminds them not to forget in the future that children should not interfere in adults' conversations. A follower of the Empress's sect and a follower of the Celestials intervene in their conversation and taunt Tony, saying that it is a pity that his beloved Vanessa did not see how he was dealt. Russell notices that their conversation with the main character is not over, and he is very curious about the flaw in the security system of the auction hall. Alistair invites Russell to join him tomorrow, because the head of the capital will come to him at the guest temple, and there he will tell him everything. Such a statement shocks everyone present because they cannot believe that the head of the capital himself will come to a meeting with a person they do not know. Even Brittany is completely delighted and once again tries to figure out who Alistair really is. Russell agrees to such an offer and offers to go to their place and wait there for the start of the auction. Once in the luxurious stands, the main character inspects the auction hall, realizing that the show is about to begin. After the sound signal, a huge flaming dragon appears in the center of the arena, which envelops all the stands with its scream. Little Shani grabs the main character by the sleeve, saying that she's a little scared, but the dragon is very beautiful. After this, the daughter of the head of the capital, Vanessa, appears in the center of the arena and declares that everyone present has been waiting for this for a very long time, and the auction will begin soon.